started, and I'll just confirm the live stream in a second. And we are now live streaming as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Aberdeenshire Licensing Board. The recording and the broadcast have started. So please note that the meeting is being live streamed and will be recorded and published online for public viewing after the meeting. Can members activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. Can I confirm that all members have been able to access the papers for today's meeting in advance?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Lots of nods.
Yes.
If members wish to speak at any point, please raise your hand in the Teams meeting, or if you've dialed into the meeting, you can raise your hand by pressing *5. If any members lose connection or have any technical issues during the meeting, please alert the Deputy Clerk by a separate Teams instant message if possible, and support will be available today from Fergus Pirrie, the ICT officer, during the meeting if required. We will be taking comfort breaks at appropriate times throughout the meeting, so we're not sitting in front of our computer screens all day. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to take the sederant now, please, Fiona?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Mr. Stuart Adams, Ms. Dawn Black.
Present.
Mr. Jeff Crowson. Mr. Crowson. I'll come back. Mrs. Ewanson.
Sorry, present.
Oh, thank you.
I have Jeff. I think this is the wrong one. So.
Mrs. Marion Ewanson.
Present.
Mr. Jeff Goodall.
Present.
Mr. Trevor Mason.
Present.
Mr. Richard Maynard.
Present.
Jenny Nichol.
Present.
Chair, I have advice from Miss Sullivan that she may be late arriving to the meeting around about 10:30. So she's not with us at the moment, but is intending to be later on. Mr. Ian Taylor.
Good morning, I'm present.
Thank you. We have apologies from Sergeant Neil Grant, but we have PC Mitch Dixon in his place. We also have the licensing standards officers with us. We have our new solicitor, Suzanne Ward, and our new trainee solicitor, Alistair McIver, observing. And we have Jenny Mearns, our admin officer, live streaming, with Beatrice Hay, Delcia Borland, our admin officers, taking notes in the background. And we also have Clark Simpson and Harriet Tavendale, our paralegals, in the meeting as well. We have several members of the public that are attending for hearings today. I've muted them meantime and will confirm their attendance at the start of each meeting. Chair, we also have Caroline Loudon present and Neil Fraser present as agents representing clients. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, my sound was off. I move on now to declaration of members' interests. Please state if you have any interest to declare, and if you have, please clarify with the item number, the nature of the declaration, and whether or not you will leave the meeting. Councillor Maynard, please. Sorry, Mr. Maynard, we're in the licensing board.
Good morning. Yes, I'm making a transparency declaration regarding to item 6. Before becoming a ward councillor for Aberdeenshire, I made statements in favour of Aldi supermarket. That was over 3 years ago. Having applied the objectives and tests, legal objectives and tests, I find that I can stay and take part in the deliberations on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at that point, when we get to that item, we know that you're staying in the meeting. We now move on to the equalities resolution. In making decisions on the attached reports, members are reminded of their legal duty under Section 149 of the Equality Act 2010 to have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimisation, advance equality of opportunity between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and foster good relations between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it. The protected characteristics under the legislation are age, disability, gender reassignment, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, sexual orientation, and in relation to point one above, which is the harassment and victimisation, marriage and civil partnership. Item 3, oh sorry, do members agree?
Agree. Agree.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3, we look at the minute of the previous meeting held on the 20th of December 2023. The minute is for approval as a correct record only. Can we agree the minute as a correct record?
Approved.
Agree. Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So we then move on to our first item of business today, item 4, applications for premises or provisional premises licenses, which are non-contentions. And we have 2. So I shall hand over to Deputy Clerk Fiona, please. Take us through.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 applications. Our paralegal, Harriet, will be taking the board through each application in turn. Harriet. Harriet, you're on mute.
Apologies. Thank you, Fiona. The first of which is for a business of Olive Tree. The premises comprise of a ground floor restaurant, takeaway and hot food delivery service in a commercial area of Banchory. The premises consist of a 28-seated area, takeaway counter, kitchen/preparation area and toilet facilities. There will be an offering of sale of alcohol for consumption both off and on the premises, and activities included are restaurant facilities and recorded music. There's also a home delivery service of food and alcohol will only be delivered between the times of PM to 10 PM. Children and young persons will be permitted access to the premises, and there are no seasonal variations have been requested. There are representations received both from Police Scotland and our licensing standing officers. This was regarding remote sales, children and young persons access, and our local conditions to be applied. These have all been agreed by the applicant, and an amended operating plan has been provided by the applicant amending the children and young persons access. I'm happy to answer any further questions that any of the members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harriet. Any questions, members, or anything you want clarity on? No. I don't see any hands up, so there's no wish to discuss the content or ask any questions of the officers. We're all quite clear. So in that case, in terms of the recommendations as set out at 1.2a, does the board have sufficient evidence to allow a determination to be made?
Yes. Yes.
We do, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in terms of recommendation 1.2b, having determined that there is sufficient evidence, should the application be granted or refused?
Granted.
Granted, yes. Mr. Menard, please.
No, I was just going to, if it was necessary, I was going to put a motion to grant, but it's been done. Thank you.
Okay, so that one is granted. So that's the Olive Tree. If we move on to the second one, I think, is it Harriet? Are you taking us through that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is for a provisional licence for the Udney Arms Hotel. The premises are a heritage hotel with 2 floors for bedrooms and serviced apartment, situated in the heart of the rural township of Udney, with dining and drinking facilities in the hotel premises. There's also a separate coffee shop. There are 2 retail pods that shall be utilised for pop-up sales, for example, sale of ice cream, local crafts, produce and products including alcohol. The premises have a large external area which can be used by patrons. There's also deliveries of food, drink and alcohol, but not alcohol alone. They will be permitted from the premises from time to time, requested or required. There will be an offering of the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises in addition to the on sales. Activities/services provided include accommodation, conference facilities, restaurant facilities, bar meals, receptions, weddings, etc. Recorded music, live performances, dance facilities, theatre, films, gaming, indoor and outdoor sports, televised sports, and indoor and outdoor drinking. Children and young persons will be permitted access to the premises, and seasonal variations per the Licensing Board's policy have been included. There was representations have been received from both Police Scotland and our licensing standing officers regarding the outdoor area, drinking facilities, deliveries of alcohol, and children and young persons access. Our Environmental Health Department also provided representation to limit the hours in which the beer garden can be operated. They'll be limited between the hours of 11 till 10 Monday to Sunday, and the amplified music will not be inaudible outside any sensitive receptors between the hours of 11 PM and 1 AM. There will also be no amplified noise making equipment shall be used externally. This has all been agreed by the applicant, and I'm happy to receive any questions.
Okay, just before questions, just a slight point, Harriet. In the papers, and of course you read it out, it does say that it's situated in the rural township of Udney. It's in Newborough.
Yes, that would be correct. This was
Yeah.
actually provided by the applicant's agent
Yeah.
directly, but I can certainly feed that back.
Just in case there's any confusion. Any comments? Do members have any questions? Don't see any hands up. So in that case, can we move straight to the recommendations? As written at 1.2a, does the board have sufficient evidence to allow a determination to be made?
Yes.
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 And
Yes.
then moving to point 1.2b, having determined that there is sufficient evidence, should the application be granted or refused?
Grant.
Granted.
Yeah.
Grant.
Granted.
I would suggest it's a grant as well. Okay, so that's both of the non-contentious applications. So thank you, Harriet. And we can move on to item 5, which is an application for grant of a premises license, and it's a hearing, and it's for Drumtochty Castle. And I'll be handing over to the Deputy Clerk to take us through that application. I think the police and the LSO are in the meeting if required.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. We have Neil Fraser, the agent for the applicant, in the meeting. This is an application for a new licence. Everything has been agreed, apart from some of the local conditions that we have as standard local conditions, which the applicant takes issue with. Everything else is agreed. Officers don't have the power to say whether a departure to policy on those local conditions can be made or not, hence the reason for the hearing today. So that's the sole reason for the hearing, is to determine whether there's sufficient reason to allow the board to depart from policy and not attach certain local conditions, or whether you're not so satisfied and those conditions should be attached to the licence. So it'd be here, Neil Fraser. As you said, we do have the police and the licensing standards officer present should there be any questions from them, but it's purely to determine whether there's justification to waive those local conditions in the circumstances of this case. There's nothing before the board that would give the board information to refuse this licence. It's purely down to the attachment of these local conditions. So, Chair, there is a procedure. I'll hand over to you, but we would kick off from hearing from Mr. Fraser. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I just confirm that Mr. Fraser is present in the meeting? I can see you.
Yes, I am. Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
I was just trying to unmute. Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Welcome. And are you satisfied that you've received all the relevant information and you feel able to participate in the determination of the application?
I am, Chair, yes.
So in line with the guidance that you've received in the public participant meeting protocol for licensing board hearings, please can you mute your microphone when not speaking if you're on your laptop, because I can see you. Please do not speak unless I invite you to do so, and please do not interrupt any other speakers. And if you do, you may be asked to leave the meeting. Once you've been asked to make concluding remarks, you're not entitled to speak again unless to answer a question from a board member. Once the board has made its decision, you will be asked to leave the meeting. If the board requires to adjourn to deliberate the application, the recording of the meeting will be paused and the board will retire to a separate online meeting room. Please wait in the main meeting room until the board members return and I can resume the meeting. At that point, the recording of the meeting will be restarted. So can I ask then, Mr. Fraser, for you to outline the terms of the application to the board and provide evidence to support your client not agreeing to the proposed local conditions? Over to you, Mr. Fraser.
I'd be happy to do so. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Drumtochty Castle is a well-established and prestigious wedding venue. It's located about 350 acres of its own grounds. It's a Grade A listed building. It's located just to the northwest of Auchenblay. Its primary function is as a wedding venue, as I say, and the details of the application before you are commensurate with that function. The castle can accommodate over 100 guests in the main building, the wings, stables and lodges. And I do appreciate at this stage I'm sounding a bit like advertising copy for a wedding weekend, but this is particularly relevant to the issues that I'm bringing, that have brought this application to the board's attention today. The castle is a rural venue. It's set in its own extensive grounds. It has no nearby neighbours. It's not an urban venue in the high street of a town. And it's in this very particular context that I bring the application to the board's attention. It's not been possible to agree the blanket imposition of the board's normal local conditions in respect to this venue. The majority of those conditions are perfectly sensible and applicable without issue, but the following conditions are the ones that cause difficulty. So there's local condition 7, which is about limiting children and young persons access to pool tables, dartboards, gaming machines, that kind of thing. I understand that the pack in front of you will suggest that it's all of the conditions 7 to 11 that are at issue. It's not, it's only condition 7, and insofar as it relates to a pool table. So that's the first issue. The other issues are to do with the outdoor drinking area. And again, issues 32 or local conditions 32 and 33 are perfectly acceptable. The ones that cause difficulty are 31, which is a 10 p.m. curfew, 34, certain practical conditions on how to set up the outdoor drinking area, and local condition 35, which is about children and young people having access to that area. So I'll start with the outdoor drinking, and I'll explain what the issues are. Largely, the reasons are to do with these specific premises. In urban locations, or really any locations with neighbours in close proximity to the premises, it makes sense to restrict the use of outdoor areas after 10 p.m. The same logic doesn't apply to a private estate with no such neighbours. In essence, there is no one to be disturbed by outside drinking after 10 p.m, or at least within reason. The applicant and the police have come to an agreement that rather than impose no conditions at all on outdoor amplified sound, the appropriate condition should be, now this is in paragraph 3.9 of the report, that any music to be played therein not to exceed what would be considered to be a reasonable level. So the applicant and the police are happy with that as a specific condition for these premises to replace the normal blanket ban on outdoor amplified music. And I would submit this strikes the appropriate balance in the case of this premises and would prevent, for example, unintended consequences of allowing large outdoor concerts if there was no limit on amplified music at all. And those may have the ability to disturb even remote rural residents. Now, in relation to the music outdoors, the timing and all the rest of it, this is a wedding venue. Guests at summer weddings will often continue to enjoy the outdoor environment well past 10 p.m. as the light permits. I suspect it's not such a big issue at this time of year, but certainly during summer weddings, guests like to be outside if the weather and the light permits. No neighbours notice, no neighbours care. There are no other premises nearby, for example, from which other patrons might disgorge and aggressively confront wedding guests or try to join in the party. There's no other licensed premises nearby where you might find mingling of crowds. The board's current policy sets out the reasoning behind its restrictions as follows, saying that beer gardens and outside drinking areas are high risk areas for being the source of complaints from local neighbours and residents in relation to noise and litter nuisance. That may well be true, but it doesn't apply to the current premises because of their specific character. No reason is set out in the board's policy in relation to public safety or crime or preventing children from coming to harm or public health. The policy does state that outdoor drinking areas should be clearly delineated. The explanation for that expressly relates to avoiding doubts when it comes to bylaws concerning consumption of alcohol in public places. Again, that's not relevant to this privately owned estate. It's possible to imagine that the board had other reasons for requiring the delineation of outdoor drinking areas if you had a series of outdoor areas in a row on a high street, all relating to one particular licensed premises. Then it might be important for the police to identify, if there were an issue to develop, which licensed premises outdoor area was it that was the cause of a disturbance or an incident, to be able then to take the issue up with the particular premises license holder. Again, that doesn't apply here. Now, in terms of practicality, one of the outdoor areas that's sought to be licensed as part of this application is a large grassy area next to the castle's pond. This area is some 200 feet in diameter. The idea is, of course, that wedding guests can mingle around this area and they can be served alcohol on trays by the castle staff. Now, if the area required to be delineated by ropes or plant pots or fencing or some other physical barrier, you'd be talking about more than 600 feet of boundary. And that's impractical to install on a temporary basis. You can't be taking that in and out on a temporary basis, and it's also not possible to install that on a permanent basis because it would destroy the aesthetic of the castle's grounds, and I would suggest it would achieve nothing. Actually, it's not separating these grounds from any other. And I would suggest that nothing in the licensing objectives require such delineation for these particular premises. My clients don't actually provide amplification equipment for playing music outside in these areas, but they do allow wedding parties to supply their own equipment. There've been no complaints about this over the years because there are no neighbours in proximity to be disturbed by the music. It adds to the enjoyment of the wedding party when arranged. It doesn't detract from anything. And I'd suggest that local condition is unnecessary in these circumstances. So for those reasons, I'm suggesting local conditions 31 and 34 are not appropriate. Local condition 35 limits children's access to these outdoor drinking areas if they're not consuming food. At risk of repetition, this might be appropriate for a beer garden in an urban setting, but it's not appropriate for over 30,000 square feet of castle grounds. Now that brings me to the last issue I have to comment on, which is the pool table. So the board's current policy states that parts of the premise to which children and young persons are to be allowed entry require to have a suitable character and atmosphere. It's in this context that the board's policy states that the board may decide not to grant premises license where children would have direct access to those areas of the premises where there is, for example, a pool table. The board's intent here is clear. The relevance of the licensing objectives is plain when one considers an urban public house where there's a pay-per-play pool table, which is the focal point of competition amongst adults consuming alcohol. If there's a rational objection to the board's local condition in that context, I can't think of it. However, that's not the scenario that exists within Drumtochty Castle. Again, the premises are a castle and extensive private grounds. The attendees are large family groups of all ages. members of the public don't attend these premises to play pool while a wedding party is in situ. Children are entertained by the contents of the games room, which is where the pool table is located. This serves to distract them from the boring parts of a wedding party, at least boring from the children's perspective. Children's toys are provided, there's a football table, there's also a pool table. Children play on it and distract themselves largely while adults are elsewhere. The games room is a distinct room in the castle. There's no bar in the games room. The bar, which is proposed children have no access to, is in a ballroom at the far side of the castle. There is no paper play pool table. This is a well-appointed games room in a Grade A listed building. The local youth are not attending the premises for the sole purpose of playing the table. I've submitted a statement from an employee of the castle, Rachel Lindsay, which I understand is with your papers. She's been working there and working weddings in the castle for 20 years this year. And she reports that she's not aware of any issues ever arising from use by the children of the pool table. I would suggest that if the board's local condition 7 is blindly applied in this case, then the result will not be an increase in the number of children prevented from harm, but an increase in the number of bored children attending family weddings. And speaking on behalf of the parents of those children in the future, I'd urge the board not to apply the condition in this case. In my submission then, considering the character of these premises and the use made of them, the conditions that I've mentioned are neither necessary or expedient to achieve any of the licensing objectives and should not be applied in this particular case.
Okay, thank you. I see members' hands coming up. So board members, have you any questions for Mr. Fraser? Starting with Mrs. Black, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for that really comprehensive submission to us. It really does help to clarify the position of the castle, and I am minded for the outdoor drinking areas to take everything that you have said on board and quite content with that. My question comes around the pool table. And I totally understand that the surroundings of the pool table are not the same as, for example, in a public house. However, I think the concern as well would be a safety issue, depending on the ages of the children that are utilising the pool table and the space around it, and you know, the likelihood or the potential for accident and injury. So could you tell me how big the games room is and what the space around the table is for example, children to be able to be going past people that are playing, to help mitigate the potential of injury from cues, etc. Thank you.
Mr. Fraser?
Yes, thank you. I'm just referring to the plan I have in the games room. So the games room itself measures about 3 meters by 3.6 meters. If I'm reading the plan correctly. I think the pool table is one of about 2 or 3 pieces of equipment in that room, and if a pool table is sort of under 2 meters long and about a meter or so wide, I don't have the particular dimensions of this particular table available, but it seems to me that in that room of about what's that going to be, 14 odd square meter, or 10 square meters, something like that. You've got a 2 square meter pool table. It's not an alcove. I think there's plenty of space around it. And I'd refer back to the witness statement here that in 20 years there have never been any issues with the use of the table.
If I could just come back, do you know if there is seating in there as well, or is it just like the pool table and football table and those things that are in there? Do you know that information?
I don't have that information. I'm aware that we, if there is seating, then it's just loose seating. It wouldn't be permanent seating in there.
Right.
I don't believe there is, because we did discuss showing seating on the layout plans for the premises, and the pool table, sorry, the games room in particular, did not come up as a location where there was any seating. But I can't confirm that. Absolutely no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goodall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Fraser, a couple of questions, please. 3.9 reasonable level of noise. Who will quantify that and police it?
Thank you, Mr. Goodall. My expectation is that there will never be an issue with noise coming from this premises. There've been no noise complaints ever in the past, to my knowledge. It is so remote from its neighbours that it's extremely unlikely that that's ever going to happen. In my discussions with the police about the application, they completely understood that a blanket ban on amplified outdoor music was not going to be appropriate for these premises, but they didn't want to leave the application with no conditions whatsoever relating to outdoor noise. Therefore, it was felt saying, well, reasonable level of noise for the premises, for the location, would be an appropriate level. I have to say, I am always slightly concerned about local conditions to do with noise in this area, because it does strike me that they overlap with other areas of local authority enforcement. I'm conscious that the licensing board's local conditions are not supposed to do that, thinking noise nuisances and that kind of thing. But my expectation would be that this isn't ever going to come up, and if it did come up, then it would be fairly obvious. If you have a neighbour a kilometre away from this premises complaining about noise emanating from it, then that noise is, I would suggest, by definition, not reasonable.
Thank you. One other question for me. The premises themselves, it will only be for weddings. Will there be public or other access to, for instance, the bar, which may affect our considerations?
The bar is, I mean, there may be functions there that are other than weddings, but those are few and far between. And largely, the bar is set up in the ballroom to serve wedding guests at a wedding. It's not something that is, there isn't a passing trade here of members of the public stopping off for a drink in the premises. They have to arrange for staff to be on hand to manage the bar, and all of that is done as part of an overall wedding plan. As I say, there may be other functions there, business functions or something like that. I think from my understanding, they may be waiting a couple of years to add themselves to the list of weddings, because it is a very busy wedding venue. But it's not something that there's really any passing trade for at all.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Nicholl, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Fraser. At one time, Drumtochty had a hot tub in one of the outdoor areas. Whilst this might not be the case any longer, and I don't see it on any of the plans, just for my own clarification, can I confirm that there's not one present on the site anymore?
I'm sorry, I can't confirm that. Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware of any hot tubs. It's not something that's come up as part of this application process, but I can't confirm from my own knowledge that there isn't any hot tub in any premises.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Mr. Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Mr. Fraser, for your submission so far. Very helpful and useful. I'm going to return to the games room. You commented there would be a pool table and some other toys and a football game. I just wanted to confirm that there would not be darts and gaming machines within the game room, which is part of this particular condition.
Yes, I think I confirm that. I can confirm that, Mr. Taylor. There's not a dartboard, and there's no electronic, what we would have called amusement with prizes machines in the past. No, nothing of that nature.
Thank you.
Mr. Crowson, please.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for all that information. Mr. Fraser, I agree with what Councillor John Block was saying about all the outside stuff. I just want to ask a little bit more about the games room as well. Being an avid pool player in the past, if it's a standard size pool table, that doesn't leave a lot of room if it's in the middle of the games room for stuff round about it. But yeah, that's the most important part. I'm sort of wondering, so is this games room, would its sort of primary function be for guests that were staying there out with weddings? And then if it is to be used and allowed for people who's attending weddings to be allowed to come into it, what supervision is there of that room? I.e., would there be a camera in that a member of bar staff could watch? And what's preventing guests, say more grown-up guests, going in there with alcohol and taking drinks into the games room while children are in it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crossan. In answer, I think I've given as much information as I can about the sizing. I don't have the actual dimensions of the table to hand. In terms of the specific questions, no, there isn't CCTV in there. And no, there's nothing to stop an adult walking from one of the function rooms into the games room carrying a drink. There's nothing to prevent that. There isn't staff on the door of the games room or anything of that nature. I'd refer back again to the witness statement that we've produced, saying in 20 years there's never been any issue in the games room. There's never been any incident of an accident or safety or a child coming to harm at all in that room in the last 2 decades.
So do you think it would maybe be an unreasonable condition to maybe ask for some sort of camera or something that a member that could be connected to one of the bars that would sort of give some reassurance, if you like, that someone has got some sort of eye in the room?
I think my submission would be that it would be disproportionate in this case. There isn't, to my knowledge. Again, this is a bar that operates in a ballroom. It's not like a bar that you'd find in a public house or nightclub. There isn't a bank of CCTV monitors set up where bar staff would have regular access to them. That doesn't exist in these premises. It is, as I say, largely families attending wedding parties that we're considering here, and they are largely, and for the past 2 decades without difficulty, been self-policing in terms of the use made of the games room by the children of those parties, and there haven't been any prior issues. So my submission would be it would be disproportionate to have a CCTV system installed in that room for the sake of peace of mind when there haven't been any issues in the last 2 decades.
So if I can just come back, so is there going to be access from other guests in the hotel separate from when the wedding's happening that could mix in this area at the same time?
There really aren't any other guests when a wedding is happening. The wedding takes over basically the whole venue. So it's not like, I mean, this is a dedicated wedding venue. This isn't like a hotel where there will be a wedding happening in one part of it in one function room, and then there are other guests unrelated to the wedding party attending for their own purposes. It's not that kind of venue. This is 100% wedding party or you're not there type of venue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further hands up. Thank you, Mr. Fraser, in dealing with all our questions. Do you wish to say anything just in closing now? Obviously adding nothing new at this stage.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to have helped.
Okay, thank you. Do board members require any legal advice from the clerk? Oh, I see Fiona has her hand up.
Chair, thank you. I'd just like to confirm for those present that Mrs. Mel Sullivan is now present in the board meeting. Can I ask her to confirm that she joined the meeting prior to the start of this hearing? And also, do you have any declarations of interest to declare before we proceed further? Thank you.
Yes, I entered at the start of this item and I have no interest to declare.
Okay. Can I
Thank you
just
very
check
much.
that you also agree with the equalities resolution?
Why, yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed you popping up there, so we could maybe have brought you in sooner. No indications. We don't require any legal advice from the clerk in this instance, Mrs. Black.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to check, should we wish to add a condition, how we can, my concern is still with the games room, to ensure that at no point in the future are more dangerous games such as dartboards, etc., added to that room. How can we condition that?
You would not be able to condition that, but if any
Right.
of the activities in that room were to change, that would involve a further variation to the licence, and it could be conditioned at that point. It's not an activity that's part of this application, so it's out with the remit of the board for today. I think Mr. Fraser wants to come in, but I'm sure he'll be of the same mind as the advice I've just given you.
That's fine. Thank you.
I might just say to reassure you, I would imagine things like a dartboard or a gaming machine would be fairly out of character with a wedding venue. So
There are rules around children's access to gaming machines as well, which would prohibit them from being located in that room. So under the gambling legislation. So I would be reassuring the board that there would be no need for a condition on that. The gambling legislation would take care of that virtually by itself. But Chair, I think Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, I see Mr. Fraser. Yeah, do you want to come in again, Mr. Fraser, in answer to that? You've muted yourself.
I have. Sometimes my spacebar works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if you ever had that experience. What I was going to say, I would consider the point made there, and I would have thought that it would be acceptable to the applicant if condition 7 were imposed under deletion of the words pool tables and the comma. So the condition would say children shall not have direct access to dartboards or gaming machines in any part of the premises, with etc., etc. So just the deletion of the words pool tables, but leaving all the other restrictions in that condition in place, I think would be an acceptable resolution.
Thank you very much for that. That would be a good compromise. Sorry to intervene.
Yeah, I mean that's not changing the intent of the condition that we have in our pool of local conditions, but addresses the applicant's issue regarding the pool table.
Okay. So no further advice required. So can you outline the terms of the legal test for the application, please, Fiona?
In terms of the legal test, which is included within the paper, there are no grounds of refusal of the licence that would apply. So it's purely you granting the application, but which local conditions are going to comply. Most of them have been agreed, as outlined by Mr. Fraser. It purely comes down to the wording of the conditions relating to the outside drinking areas and the pool table, of which Mr. Fraser has offered evidence. So has he provided you with sufficient assurance and evidence about the running of the premises to justify either not attaching those conditions or attaching them with the modified wording as put before you today? Or are you not so satisfied? And if you're not so satisfied, what further reassurances do you seek? Because I am not sure that the applicant agreeing to the wording as is, so we would hit stalemate. We would need to defer if further reassurance was sought. So none of the grounds of refusal apply. So you're looking to grant purely the terms of the local conditions that are disputed, I think is the right word to say, that you are being asked to agree today. Everything else has been agreed by the applicant, as you will see from the body of the report.
Okay, thank you. So, members, do you wish to retire to deliberate, or can we proceed? Okay, so we can carry on. So I now open it up to members to debate. Mrs. Black, please.
Thank you. For me, I'm reassured about the outside. I mean, it is in a remote area. There are no neighbours. I'm perfectly content with the outside drinking area conditions not being included, bar the reasonable noise compromise condition that has been outlined from the police. And as for the pool room and the games room, I'm content with the suggestion from Mr. Fraser that we leave that condition in, but omit the words pool table. I think that's a perfect compromise to be going forwards with this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crowson.
Thank you. I preempted that I was probably going to agree with everything that Councillor Black said, so if that comes to a motion, I would second it.
Okay, we're not quite at that stage, but I mean, for me, the issue here is the conditions are really set for premises which are in a more built-up area. This is a very remote location with lots of its own space and the siting. So things like the 10 p.m. usage of an outdoor area isn't quite such an issue as it would be in a town centre, which is what we're normally dealing with. And again, the delineation of the outdoor drinking area is difficult when in effect just about anywhere outside in the outdoor area would be suitable for people to bring drinks out during a wedding weekend. And the focus on the games room, again, pool table, I wouldn't have an issue with. Darts, I would have an issue with, but I would say that's highly unlikely to ever come up as an issue that they want to put a dartboard in the Drumtochty Castle in the games room. But I'll let other members speak. They've got hands up now. Councillor Taylor, Mr. Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with all your comments. I would just like to highlight that, what's already been said, a venue of 100% wedding functions, family functions, probably self-policing in many, many aspects, remote location, and yeah, agree with what's been commented earlier. Thank you.
Okay, I see PC Dixon wishes to come in, please.
Chair, we are past the discussion stage, so
I'll move on.
if it's in relation to the police condition with information, I would be saying yes, we hear from him, but we're past the debate stage. We're past the discussion submission stage and the questioning stage into the debate stage. So it's at the hands of the board, but if it adds to the proposed local conditions, it may be useful to hear from PC Dixon.
Okay, and at this point as well, since we're moving from the debate, can members confirm they've received sufficient evidence upon which to make a decision?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Do we wish to hear from PC Dixon in relation to the local condition?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes. So can I bring you in then, please, PC Dixon?
Thanks. It's just very quickly a question for Mr. Fraser. The delineation of the outdoor drinking area, is there a natural delineation of the boundary of your premises? So the grounds in which contain your premises. I assume there's a natural delineation, whether it be fencing or a walled area or something to delineate what the actual licensed area would be. I appreciate removable barriers or something of that ilk wouldn't be appropriate given the square meterage of your premises, but I assume that there's a natural delineation for the boundary of your premises and its grounds.
Can I bring in Miss Stewart, please?
The boundary of the entire area that's to be licensed is delineated on the layout plan attached to the license. It has to be highlighted as a red line, but physical boundaries we would not take into account, but the licensable area is delineated on the layout plan attached to the license if granted.
Okay, thanks. I'll look at that.
Okay. So at this stage then, I could call for a motion. Ms. Black, please.
Yes, thank you. As I said earlier, I would put forward a motion to grant with taking out conditions 31, 34, 35. Please, Fiona, keep me right. And putting in a condition about the wording of the condition for reasonable noise, and changing the wording of condition 7 to take out the words pool tables from that condition. I would seek a seconder.
Okay, Mr. Menard, please.
Yes, I would gladly second that that motion on the same grounds, with the same stipulated changes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a contrary view? No. So in that case, can I just confirm with the board that the decision is unanimous?
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. Okay, I don't think we need to do that by means of a roll call. Seeing lots of nodding heads. Could the Deputy Clerk just confirm then the decision, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the application has been granted as applied for with the already agreed local conditions, with the removal of the conditions 31, 34 and 35 for the outdoor drinking area, with the addition of the condition regarding reasonable noise agreed with the police, and with the amendment of condition 7 to remove the word pool tables. Written notification will be issued to all parties in 7 days, and the licence will follow in due course. Thank you, Mr. Fraser. You're welcome to attend to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but you're equally free to leave as this matter has ended.
Thank you very much, Chair and members.
Thank you. I can just confirm now that this hearing has concluded. Thank you for your interest in the business. And as Fiona said, you're welcome to stay, but you can leave the meeting. And then we will move on to the next item, item 6, which is our second hearing, application of provisional grant of premises licence for Aldi Macduff. So we'll just wait until members come in to the meeting. And I think, Mr. Menard, you are remaining in the meeting.
Chair, we have Caroline Loudon with us today as the agent for Aldi's. We also have Rebecca Broadway in the meeting, who is Caroline will correct me, an area manager, is that right? I may have misremembered that, which is here. So I'll introduce the report before you follow the procedure. This is an application for a provisional premises licence for a new Aldi store in Macduff. All matters have been agreed in relation to this application. However, there is a representation from Sarah Ward, our Licensing Standards Officer, which highlights the terms of our over-provision policy in relation to the town of Macduff. Our over-provision policy only relates to off-sales, and in Macduff we have an amber level of relating to over-provision of off-sales, which means that we have a watching brief, and while some of the alcohol-related harms are low in relation to number of premises, level of alcohol, alcohol-related harm is high in Macduff. We therefore have a watching brief on any application that has an alcohol capacity above the Aberdeenshire average of 34.3 metres square. The applicant was asked if they wished to reduce their alcohol capacity before processing. They opted not to, so the application has been processed with the capacity higher than the level set in our watching brief. So the sole purpose of the hearing today is for the applicant to demonstrate that in relation to the licensing objectives, the benefits of having an alcohol licence for this premises outweigh the already identified related harm related to the watching brief status for Macduff. I would say that we're not at red level here. We have not categorically said that there is over provision of off sales. It's just in relation to the alcohol related harm identified. There have been written submissions lodged by Ms Loudon, which are part of your papers, and her notes that she will talk to today have also been circulated to you prior to the start of this meeting. So there's no grounds to refuse other than in relation to the potential for provision, and it's a watching brief. Can the applicant satisfy the board that the benefits in relation to the 5 licensing objectives outweigh the alcohol-related harm levels identified for Macduff in the board's over-provision policy? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I just check that we have somebody from Aldi Stores? I think we've got Caroline Loudon. Can you just confirm your attendance, please?
Yes, I can, and we've got Rebecca here from Aldi as well.
Yeah,
thank you.
Rebecca, can you just confirm your attendance?
Yeah, good morning. I'm on the call.
Okay, thank you. So in line with the guidance that you've received in the public participant meeting protocol for licensing board hearings, please can you mute your microphone when not speaking, and please do not speak unless I invite you to do so, and please do not interrupt any other speakers. If you do so, I may have to ask you to leave the meeting. And then once you've been asked to make your concluding remarks, you're not entitled to speak again unless to answer a question from a board member. Once the board has made its decision, you will be asked to leave the meeting. If the board requires to adjourn to deliberate the application, the recording of the meeting will be paused and the board will retire to a separate online meeting room. Please wait in the main meeting room until the board members return and we can resume the meeting. At that point, the recording of the meeting will be restarted. So welcome to the meeting, and can I first then go to Caroline to outline the terms of the application to the board and your client's justification for allowing the board to grant a departure to their over-provision policy in this case.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Good morning, Your Honours. I'm Caroline Loudon from TLT Solicitors, representing Aldi Stores Limited, and I'm here this morning with Rebecca Broadway, who's an area manager for Aldi. And this is an application for a provisional premises licence for a new Aldi site at Duff Street, Macduff. It's an off-sales only premises licence with hours 10 AM to 10 PM. I did provide you with a detailed licensing pack, just some background information on Aldi and their community and social impact, some relevant press coverage in relation to their expansion in the UK, including some details on current pay rates for staff. Kantar detailing, confirming Aldi is the 4th supermarket in terms of market share at the moment. Obviously that does change. And a report created by Cavendish, who are a PR company, which just gives you some background into press coverage and detailed comments in relation to the planning consultation that was carried out just last year for this site. So it was just all relevant to the background history here. And indeed, there has been a bit of history in that planning permission to build the new store in Macduff was granted in 2022. And an application for provisional premises licence submitted just shortly after that in August of 22. And again, you can see reference in this from the press coverage that I've produced to you. The Tesco judicial review was successful in overturning or quashing the original planning permission, meaning that the client had to reapply for planning, and of course we then had to reapply for a provisional premises licence. And I'd like to thank your licensing team for all of their assistance in this more than unusual situation to date. So we're really grateful to them, and indeed getting to board today. So I think Your Honours will be very familiar with Aldi as a supermarket already. It's an award-winning retailer. First opened its store in the UK in 1990, and since then has established itself as one of the most reputable retailers in the UK. It's now got over 100 stores in Scotland. I think this will be store number 107 if we are given the go-ahead today. But there's further plans for growth and investment throughout Scotland as well. They've spent approximately 55 million over the last 2 to 3 years in new stores, but also extensions and upgrades to existing store profiles. We call them Project Fresh refits. And they've created over 200 jobs in the process. And that site in Macduff is obviously part of this investment plan. And the Aldi mission statement is to provide customers with good quality produce at a fair price. And in Scotland, they try and showcase the best food and drink that the country has to offer. And in each of the Scottish stores, you'll find around 450 what we call everyday Scottish product ranges And Aldi works with about 90 Scottish core suppliers too, from McCallum's milk, for example, to the Scottish hens laying the eggs for sale, plus additional tie-ups they can do with those suppliers in very localised areas as well. And we've got, for example, Eden Mill will supply into Fife and Edinburgh as well. And Scottish products equate to around 20% of Aldi's sales in Scotland, and the client provides seasonally fresh products, locally sourced where they can, and obviously of a high quality. One of the key points behind the success is the business model, and that's offering a limited range of core products. And by that I mean that instead of finding a shelf full of different types of ketchup, you'll only find 2 in an Aldi store. And we restrict the range to around 1,880 core products. And that provides operational efficiency and allows that passing of savings onto the customer by way of these lower prices that we can obtain. And that's why we're referred to as a discounter. And as you can imagine, this has been very well received by customers in the current cost of living crisis. And Aldi has been named the Which cheapest supermarket of the year for the past 3 years running, as well as other accolades as well. And on the same basis that the core product range of groceries are limited, so is the alcohol range as well, but it is fundamental to the offering of the store. All existing Aldi stores in Scotland have permission to sell alcohol by way of a premises licence, and that ensures that the stores are commercially viable as well. Their experience is that customers will shop elsewhere if they can't complete a full basket shop within a store, and that may or may not include the alcohol component, so it is important. But that being said, alcohol is very much ancillary to the overall offer, and the capacity is sought with this application is 40.29051 metres squared. It's very specific, of alcohol display area, which would account for about 3% of the overall trading area for the store itself. So relatively limited. The alcohol display area is located to the rear of the store. It's manned by staff and has full CCTV coverage as well. And an Aldi fit out is as efficient as their trading methodology. Every inch of the space is properly planned. And in comparison to other retailers, as I say, it's a relatively small BWS area for the size of the store itself. Also important to note, and I'm often asked, we don't sell chilled alcohol, caffeinated wines or alcopops, those types of products. So just add that in at this point. The ancillary nature of the alcohol offer is also evidenced from, we can go to Kantar, the consumer panel report, people, and they say that alcohol makes up about 15.3% of a customer's average spend on the basket, which is against 38.1% on fresh and chilled and 28.4% on ambient goods. So it's again the minority in terms of the basket. If I look at the site itself, the proposal is to deliver a new modern food store to serve residents living within Macduff and the surrounding area. The investment is upwards of 3.3 million in the development of the site itself. It will create about 35 full-time equivalent jobs, and of course there'll be additional opportunities within the construction and supply chain as well. So there's a real halo effect of investment and construction which will be felt by the community here. The site will house the new Aldi store and dedicated car park. It's approximately 106 parking spaces, which will also include designated parking for 9 accessible bays, parent and child bays, click and collect bays as well. It will have 4 electric vehicle charging points, and it's got 10 cycle stands, and that's again to encourage and to support sustainable transport methods. The bus services, I think, are about a minute's walk away on Duff Street itself. In terms of the store, Aldi is committed to meeting high standards of energy efficiency and responsible energy usage. It uses environmental friendly, efficient refrigeration, LED lighting, both internally and externally. Lights are switched off after the store closes. And a new Aldi store will also use an air source heat pump, which recycles the waste from the store's refrigeration system as well, which is obviously all we need to be going in that direction. The store will be 1,881 metres square gross, with 1,315 metres squared, as I say, of sales space itself. So it's around twice the size of the existing Co-op in Banff and slightly larger than the existing Aldi at Elgin. We've provided details of the press coverage in the licensing pack, but also details of real community support for this new Aldi. When the client first went out to consultation on the planning side of things, they had over 700 responses to that, and of these 98% were in support of a new Aldi coming to Macduff. And some of these very positive comments can be seen in the licensing pack that I've given to you. I think many of the comments are around those living in Macduff not having a great amount of shopping choice, That choice is really limited to the Tesco in Banff and the Scotmid Co-op, plus these convenience stores referred to in the Licensing Board's report. And those are 3 off-sale premises within Macduff itself, being a Scotmid, a Key Store and Devon Direct wholesaler. So convenience stores and a wholesaler, so not an Aldi at all. And we're very different to those retailers in what we're seeking to provide the customer as a shopping experience. People are currently travelling to Elgin, 55 minutes away, Fraserburgh, Inverurie, Peterhead, and even to do the shop at the Asda in Aberdeen. So these distances certainly all add up. And Aldi have existing stores in Elgin, Peterhead and Ellen, just for information too. So as I say, this new store will create 35 direct, full and part-time equivalent jobs, plus these additional jobs for suppliers, and they're good jobs in terms of the pay levels and opportunities for advancement. The client will seek to recruit locally where they can. They are an accredited Scottish Living Wage employer, and we believe that they're the highest paying supermarket in the UK at the moment. There is an extensive training programme for staff to assist with their development within Aldi. There are market-leading apprenticeship and graduate schemes, and of course the programme includes licensing training. That is carried out quarterly in relation to alcohol and other age-restricted products, but all staff must sit and pass this exam before they can go onto the shop floor, and by passing I mean they've got to get 100%. There is a comprehensive training programme for all staff which goes beyond the mandatory 2 hours training that the 2005 Act actually requests. In addition to the exemplary staff training, Aldi uses automated EPOS till prompts at checkout. The checkout operator is being prompted to verify the age of the purchaser, but also sales of alcohol are restricted electronically prior to licensed hours, so you can't buy physically before 10 AM or after 10 PM. Challenge 25 is in place and supported by the electronic prompt, as I've referred to, and of course the staff training itself, and external audits are carried out by the Portman Group for us. Refusals, when there are some, are electronically logged. These are reviewed by the store's DPMs. That information is then given to the area manager. It's then provided on to the ops directors who are based in Bathgate. And that gives overall oversight as to how each store is performing. And if anybody's coming out of sync, we can look at what's happening with that. Refusals and analysis is then undertaken. We've provided a comprehensive note in terms of how the client supports the licensing objectives as well. In terms of supporting the local area, Aldi's aim is always to be part of the local community and support it. They want to make a positive contribution to that community by applying skills and resources beyond just the stores themselves. They support charities and also operate their own schemes that make a positive impact on that local community. For example, we have the Scottish Sport Fund, and that is a Scottish-wide community-based sport programme where local clubs can apply for funding of up to £500 if you want to buy new kit or that kind of thing. We also support breakfast clubs by providing fresh fruit and vegetables and contribute other ways, and that can be seen in the information that I provided in your pack, which comes from Neighbourly and refers to Aldi, Peterhead and Elgin. I'm taking it that your honours have all seen that, so I won't go through it because I know this is a fairly long submission, but I'm happy to at the end if you'd like me to. When we first lodged this application for provisional premises licence, that was August 22, just prior, as I say, to the Tesco JR of the planning permission. Had that application been able to be determined in 2023, we would have been subject to the board's previous statement of licensing policy, and that for North Aberdeenshire only. And that policy said that they felt that your honours felt that placing a limit on the number of licensed premises or premises of a particular kind would not, in the board's view at this point in time, serve to promote any of the 5 licensing objectives. So there was, in essence, no direct over-provision assessment. But because of the Tesco delay, we now face a different view on over-provision, which is split into different risk profiles. But in summary, as your clerk has kindly summarised, there is a watching brief here in relation to Macduff, and that relates to applications which are have an alcohol capacity of over 34.3 metres squared. So although there's no over-provision in Macduff, we are subject to this separate watching brief, and that relates to the licensing objectives. So it's been difficult to formulate a response to that other than to link back to the licensing objectives itself. There's no legal basis that it can be said that there's a situation of over-provision in Macduff as a locality, and there's no sufficient evidence to demonstrate a causal link between the operations of off-sales in Macduff and alcohol-related harms. There are only 3 off-sale premises in Macduff, and information has been provided just of their names. And as I say, I can distinguish from them because we're not convenience and we're not a wholesaler. In terms of your key objectives to be examined, then we're looking at the prevention of crime and disorder and protecting and improving public health. And that comes again from the note that I was provided by your legal team. If I take prevention of crime and disorder first off, the premises in question here are a supermarket selling a wide range of food and other goods. No alcohol is consumed on the premises. Any incidents of crime and disorder will be rare, and they would be recorded and legal remedies obviously explored. I've detailed our Challenge 25 policy, our staff training, our automatic till prompts for all age-restricted products. Security needs could be assessed, and if additional security were needed, this can be added. 25% of staff on average hold personal licences. The client has a completely clean record, if we call it that, when it comes to licensing offensive in Scotland, and there's no link between these premises and potential crime and disorder. In terms of protecting and improving public health, the first and most obvious benefit is the access to low cost and high quality fresh produce that the client wishes to bring, particularly fruit and vegetables for the community that we serve. But in addition to this, the halo effect of the provision of better foods is often acknowledged in other board areas by the NHS itself. There's no negative representation to this application from any party at all. We operate the Healthier Tills policy, and that's the removal of confectionery and sugary drinks from till points. We have stocking healthier snacks essentially when you go to checkout. We've got additional material providing information and promotion of responsible drinking, and that messaging is all around the stores. All staff are trained to refuse service of alcohol to anyone who appears to be intoxicated. And given that our staff tend to get to know the community very well, we build relationships with the shoppers and can assist with other interventions should that be necessary. Our pricing is consistent, responsible, and relates to the quality products sold by us. Minimum unit pricing takes away any suggestion of alcohol being used as a loss leader or indeed a discounted product. And I think it's also agreed that it's good to work, and we have acknowledgement from that in what's called the Waddell and Burton report, which is dated 2006, but is the only academic report that I can find that confirms that essentially that work is not just a way of providing adequate economic resources, it also meets important psychosocial needs of people. It's central to an individual's identity, assists with mental health and also mortality. And the report concludes that there's strong evidence base showing that work is generally good for physical and mental health and well-being indeed. All of these indicate how we through economic investment, jobs, excellent provision of produce, we will protect and improve public health of the area. And to sum up, Aldi is an excellent retailer with an unblemished track record in Scotland, responsible retailer in terms of their commitment to the licensing objectives themselves. They have an extensive and robust due diligence process in place. They'd like to invest in this site and in the local community to the tune of 3.3 million. The investment itself is welcome with open arms, it seems, from all the public consultations. The new premises will bring more jobs to Macduff and the local area, and it will give customers more choice, give them more access to good quality food at low prices, which is of course vital at the moment. We've addressed your honours on the watching brief side of things. This is not over provision, and we will uphold and promote the licensing objectives as I have identified. There are no objections to this application, and I do move the grant with the originally applied for capacity of 4.2 metres squared. We are very different from the existing 3 off-sales outline identified in the board report, and I hope that my submissions today allow you to find in favour of this excellent retailer on the basis that there is no negative impact on the licensing objectives identified. And I will simply move the grant at this stage, and thank you for your time this morning too.
Okay, thank you. It's now open to members for questions, but there's a lot of information in that, but I just want members to actually concentrate on what we're looking at today. It's not the planning application for a supermarket, it's the over provision watching brief and the shop area dedicated to alcohol.
Chair,
Yes.
does the board wish to hear from Sarah, the LSO, in relation to the representation
Um,
before you move to questions?
Yeah, I've got that in my head as well because I see Sarah there. I've got members with hands up, but I think it would be useful to hear from Sarah. I've just opened up her representation as well on page 153 of your papers. Can I go to Sarah first, please? Are members agree that we hear from Sarah Ward, LSO?
Yes, please.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to speak to your representation, please? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Good morning. Hello.
I've got you now. I've got
Do
you now.
apologise, some technical issues there, not the first today. Thank you, board members. Yeah, I think our clerk to the board summed up the reasoning for where we're at today in terms of this provisional premises licence application, in terms of the over-provision policy set by the licensing board as a watching brief. I've listened to the presentation given, and I don't have any further comments. The conditions have been agreed, and the licensing objectives risk assessment was updated in respect of my representation made. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We'll move to members' questions at this stage. Mr. Crowson, please.
Well, before I asked my question, I was going to ask Fiona to summarise what we were supposed to be concentrating out of that, but Marion did it. So I just wanted to ask the representatives for Lidl's, is 3%?
It's Aldi.
I don't, Aldi, sorry. Aldi, I apologise. Is 3% sort of average floor space that you would give to alcohol in all your stores, or do you sometimes vary that percentage depending where the store is?
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. We do. A store, when it's being looked at for build, sometimes they are limited by, say, access or, just what is around the store in itself. So that dictates the size of the store. Even in a 1351 store, which this is, we would be looking potentially for a higher alcohol display than is. So we vary between, I would say, 2% and 6%. I've done a couple of new applications in Fife where it's been nearer the 6%. And that's been to do with changes. These are older stores. We've done what we call the Project Fresh refit. Now, it's a bit of a technical argument, and I'll not bore you with the whole detail, but essentially, on the older store, the shelving was much thinner. And on a new Aldi store, if you go in, instead of having doors that open in the refrigeration units towards you that could be closed and not meet, they slide across. So it's much more efficient in terms of energy usage. But also the BWS area, the shelving was much thicker. So you had some of the alcohol being presented in wee baskets. So although there was an increase to the capacity in these stores, there wasn't actually more product ever going to be on the shelf. But so we've had to increase in that case from 4% up to 6%. It's more to do with the shelving than actually to do the alcohol stocking itself. But I think 3% is lower on average than we would usually apply for. Yes. I hope that helps.
Yes. It's definitely always interested to hear that sort of detail.
Yeah.
And I do apologise again for getting it wrong. The 3%, I think, just is a sort of, in simple terms, if that's less than what you would normally do at, say, an average stores in a place that we're sort of concerned about over provision, then I think that's sort of showing that there's a bit of sensitivity to what you're asking for today. So
100%. Apologies, computer, sorry.
That's okay. Just questions at this stage, members. Mr. Goodall, please.
My apologies, my systems aren't working again. So much for my full fibre boast. Right, I thank you, Caroline, for that, Miss Lewin. Couple of questions. In your submission to us, not sure what you call it, the submission to the, trying to find my place again, please forgive me, I hit the space bar to open my mic and it changed everything on my screen and didn't open the mic. So what we are interested in is the over-provision and licensing objectives. And in your submissions at, I'm not sure what page it is, but in that, under that section, you have a summary 1, 2, and 3. Now, having read all of that, are you linking the fact that there's you've got you do mention multiple and income deprivation and the availability of alcohol and evidence of harm under those 3 headings? I'm just wondering, are you linking that and the under provision as you see it to your profitability? And the reason that you're looking for this larger space is to increase the profitability. And is that linked to the overall, given that you've given this background of the whole store and what you're planning to do, is this linked to the overall viability of the scheme?
Your Honour, it's not linked with profitability per se. The summary that I've given at 1, 2 and 3 is just lifting the points from your board report so that the relevant points could be discussed today, and essentially linking those to the licensing objectives. There is no over-provision in Macduff as a locality. So that can't be put forward to me as a legal reason to refuse this application, because there isn't any that's been accepted. So I then have to link back to the licensing objectives themselves. But it is important, if you're asking if it's important to this client to have 40.2, yes, it is. This store has been delayed substantially by another retailer taking a judicial review and quashing original planning permission. And again, not entirely relevant to this, but it has created delay. In terms of what is produced by Aldi on the shop floor, you're not looking at having an increase in capacity to have multiple bottles of wine, for example, on a shelf, and therefore trying to increase profitability by sales of that kind. That's not the case. It is the choice. So by having a smaller BWS area, we would have to cut back the choice essentially for the customer. We wouldn't have the ranges of gin that we have, the ranges of beer that we have. It would have to be done in a different way. So it is not to do with the commercial impact, although that obviously is a factor, but it's more to do with the choice for the customer. And I say that in terms of the speaking note that I provided, the licensing objectives that are relevant here are prevention of crime, disorder, and protecting and improving on public health, and that we, in the way that we conduct our business, do not have a negative impact on those, and indeed protect and improve them and assist the board in that way. I hope that answers your question.
No, it doesn't, I'm afraid. I'm a long-term retailer and I do understand how retail works. And the increase in what you're looking for in footage does have a direct effect on your profitability and the overall ability of the store to function in a profitable manner. All business is about profit. It's not about anything else. And I'm interested that you've linked that. This is a deprived area in many ways, and I would be concerned that we need good reason under our circumstances now, under change of over-provision policy. We need a good reason to allow this to happen, and I can't at the moment see a good reason for it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goodall. The points you're referring to are not actually in the papers. They're in the written submission to members, which was provided by email, just in case anybody's looking for it. Mr. Mason, please.
Can I ask Sarah Ward a question? It's Caroline has put forward her opinion on the two licensing objectives of preventing crime and disorder and protecting and improving public health. is it possible to hear the other side of the coin and what evidence there is that there is going to be crime committed, that possibly crime committed, if this is allowed to go ahead?
I don't know. Do you feel able to answer that, Sarah?
Crime and disorder maybe come back to Police Scotland on, but obviously in terms of the licensing objectives, they have put in how they'll comply with the 5 licensing objectives, CCTV, trained staff, etc. Public health, there are other products being sold within the premises, a range of soft drinks. I don't have an Aldi within my area, and there are other LSOs that have Aldis in the area. In terms of compliance or breach of licensing objectives and conditions, maybe ask the other LSOs if they've had any issues in terms of breaches, but I think that's all I could really say on the matter at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
PC Dixon.
Chair, could I interrupt?
Stuart's wanting to come in just now. Yeah.
Can I maybe bring our paralegal clerk in here, who did all the statistical background work to our over-provision policy? I'm not convinced that the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objective on its own is of a high priority here, because we're looking at alcohol-related harm. In particular in relation to the over-provision policy. So perhaps if Clark could kind of explain what we're looking at in terms of alcohol-related harm, which has led to the watching brief. I think you may find that the focus is on the watching brief has been set at the Aberdeenshire average because of that public health alcohol-related harm, rather than the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objective. But if I could ask the board's indulgence to bring Clark in, he can explain it much better than I can.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, members, happy to hear from Clark. I think that would be useful at this point. Can I bring you in, please, Clark? Oh, you're on mute as well.
Yeah, so when we looked at over provision, or we looked at setting over provision limits, we did study and have a look into the kind of evidence of harm there was already in the in many towns and settlements, Macduff being one, and that's where we're in the position we are with Macduff, because there was a higher level of evidence of harm being caused by alcohol. In terms of what we looked at the crime rates. Macduff has a crime rate, 40% of its SIMD data zones have a crime rate of 70% of the Scottish average, above 70% of the Scottish average. It's also within the top 5 towns within Aberdeenshire in terms of crime rate, when you take the mean average of all its data zones. And it's also in the area where the police stats showed that there was the highest recorded incidents of violent crime within licensed premises. So they are the crime stats. Now, there was no direct stats provided about theft, anything like that, so we've been unable to consider that. In the main, in terms of the protecting and improving public health evidence of harm, we looked at alcohol-related hospitalisations in the area, and again, 80% of the data zones in Macduff showed that they had an alcohol-related hospitalisation rate of 70% of the Scottish national average. 2 of the data zones were within the top 10 highest alcohol-related hospitalisation rates for Aberdeenshire. And it's within the top 5 towns within Aberdeenshire when you take the mean average of their hospitalisation rate in terms of alcohol-related hospitalisations. It's also had an increasing alcohol-related hospitalisation rate since 2016 in Macduff. So those are the stats that we looked at, which led to a higher level in terms of evidence of harm. As I say, that's what we've looked at, and that's the basis of the findings we had in terms of that higher level for Macduff.
Okay, thank you, Clark. Does that help members focus on the
Chair,
actual?
I think you may wish to allow Caroline Loudon an opportunity to come back on those stats for clarity from the applicant's point of view.
Yeah.
I think that would help with the debate for the board.
Okay.
No, thank you very much to you both. As a legal point, I have to note that I've had no prior knowledge of this. I haven't had fair notice of it at all. When you try and link back from the policy to find the stats, the page just doesn't exist. So I have no information. So this is brand new to me at the minute. So in terms of a legal motion, that would be essentially not to allow that to be accepted by the board, because I haven't had fair notice of it essentially, and I'm concerned that I've got no chance to look at these stats. I've got no chance to analyse them or answer them. I've simply put again, in terms of the legal test of provision, which is there is no watching brief in terms of what the law requests that you do. It is over provision or breach of licensing objectives, and I think I've got to be very clear on that, which I seek to do so now.
Okay, I think if you just check the actual report, the information is in the licensing board report. But Caroline, can I just ask you, did you see when you click?
The report gives a summary.
Yeah.
When the report just gives a summary, it doesn't give any of the data that's just been referred to by your LSO, and I can understand why you've asked for that. Of course I can. But when you then link back to the board's policy itself, there's a hyperlink to be able to analyse the documentation that sits behind it, and that does not work. There are references to something like the CRESH report, other points, which again has been identified as not being particularly reliable in various pieces of case law. So I think we've got the possibility of going down a rabbit hole that does not need to be gone down on the basis that there's no legal over provision in this case for the locality of Macduff, and I'm taking it that you are taking that as the locality.
Yeah,
So,
locality is Macduff.
Yeah.
What we're looking at here is the difference between the Aberdeenshire average and the higher figure in relation to the alcohol-related harm that we've identified. So we're not refusing the application, it's the difference between the Aberdeenshire average that we've identified is acceptable and the higher level that the applicant is seeking to have granted in the application, but in relation to the alcohol-related harm and the summary of the evidence provided within the body of the report, which Caroline did have sight of along with her letter. So that is the information that is key here. The background information relates to the over provision as a whole, but we're not concentrating on prevention of crime and disorder in relation to the additional capacity. It's the alcohol related harm impact, which is why we've set that watching brief at the Aberdeenshire average. I've just forgotten what it is, 34.2 square metres. So it's the difference between the Aberdeenshire average being applied here and the additional capacity that the applicant is seeking to have that is why this is before the board today.
Okay. And just to clarify as well, the information was given to us just now by Clark Simpson, who's the paralegal who compiled the statistics for us. He's not the LSO, so that's where that information came from. And it is summarised in the report. We were just getting the detail and the background information. So I see lots of hands up. We are still at questions, members. Mr. Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank Caroline for her information to date. My question, I'm not sure it'll be for Caroline or Rebecca, but I appreciate that all the operator specific management and building design. But my question really is there a storage area for alcohol in addition to the display area within the building setup?
Yes, there is. This is should be detailed on the licensing layout plan, and indeed one of your conditions is that is a lock fast space, and that's been accepted, Your Honour.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
just to confirm that is the case, it's in the papers before you, and the applicant has accepted that local condition.
Okay, Ms. Black, please.
Thank you. Thinking about what Mr. Goodall said earlier and asking about capacity, looking at the figures here, the average that Aberdeenshire for this watching brief area, the average is 34.3 metres squared. As far as I can understand it from the papers and what has been said today, the applicant is looking for 40.3 metres squared of display space for alcohol, which is just 6 metres squared. Now, the applicant has stated in one of her responses that that would limit choice to the customer. Can I ask how much choice, considering that the capacity is quite low, it's only 3% of your floor space, etc., how much choice would be removed by limiting you by 6 metres squared? Thank you.
I'll bring in Miss Loudon, but if at any point you want to defer to Rebecca for information like that, Miss Loudon, just say so.
Thank you, and indeed I can answer that question. It is about having the additional space, for example, to have a rotation of Christmas products or Easter products coming in. It's that kind of thing rather than seeking, as I say, additional lines themselves. I'm not sure if Rebecca will have that information, convener. Certainly happy to ask her if she does or could assist with this one. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I couldn't give you exact figures because our seasonal ranges do vary throughout the year. We do have a varying number of products available depending on the time of year that it is and what our product range looks like. But if I was to look at some of our older style stores that have a lot smaller square footage generally, and therefore their alcohol square footage is less because it's still in line with the percentage of the total shop floor. Within those stores, we have anywhere from kind of 25 to 40 lines that we cannot merchandise because we physically do not have the space to do. So the store of this size in Macduff, those stores follow our standard format merchandising, whereas the stores with less merchandising space than a standard store would be looking at upwards of 40, potentially if it's a busier summer and we have a number of new lines coming in, it could be up to 50 lines that we don't then merchandise in that store at all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Menard, please.
Yes, I'd just like to ask Clark, the information that you gave us, what was the date that was founded on, or, you know, you formed all that information? Where did it come from and what timeline are we looking at? Is that over a period of 12 months or when did it start? When's it dated back from?
Chair, can I come in there and say that we have checked our website and that statistical information is not fully on our website. So Caroline's legal point is absolutely valid there. You can only rely on the summary information that has been included in the report. So although Clark has mentioned it, that relates to the overall policy. That information is not yet publicly available. The links are not working on the website, so that cannot be founded upon by the board today because the applicant has not had fair notice.
Okay, so in that case, Richard, we wouldn't go to Clark for an answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Crowson, please.
Okay, I think I've just got lost with that last bit then for the lack of information, but if I could ask the ALDI representatives, I'm trying to think of how to make this into a question, but I see the importance of choice of product, because if someone was to come in to do their shopping and they were maybe looking for a nice choice of product to pick from, and they can't see necessarily the product they want, they may end up going to another store. Whereas, would you see a difference with that? Whereas if someone was coming in, say, with an alcohol problem, that's what we're kind of discussing, the over provision and that here would affect. If they didn't get the product that you wanted, they would just probably pick another product anyway. So, can you sort of help me? I'm trying to make it into a question. Can you help me with the importance of this having the choice, and how that is more for having general customers in the store as opposed to people that might have problems with alcohol?
Ms. Loudon, can you answer that one? It's a tricky question.
I'm not sure I can help with that one. It's
or do you just agree with what I'm saying?
Would you like me to answer that one?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah,
We'll bring in Rebecca.
So from a customer perspective, I think you're quite right there in that if you think of our percentage of customers that do have an alcohol problem, obviously I do not have those statistics whatsoever, but our average number of customers, the average individual coming into a store, we put a lot into advertising in terms of specific products that we bring into Aldi. People get really excited about it, and the disappointment of customers that cannot access those products is greater probably than the risk of those who are coming in to purchase a form of alcohol, not necessarily a specific form of alcohol, but those that come in and would just be looking for the, whatever alcohol choice they would be after, but would take the next best option. I think the benefits to the average customer outweigh that of the potential risk to those specific individuals coming into the store looking for a form of alcohol.
Okay,
Your Honour, if I could just add to that, we have done an application fairly recently where, again, this point about we know the customer, and the customer had previously come to us to say, please do not allow me to purchase alcohol. He'd spoken to the store manager, and sure enough, he appeared to try and purchase again, and there was an intervention there with the staff who suggested, you don't need to do this at this point, and assisted him. So I think it's about knowing your customer base, who's coming in, watching the shopping patterns and trying to be protective and preventative where we can be. And again, that links back to our place within the local community and the social values of having an Aldi there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goodall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I guess a question to Ms. Broadway and Loudon. I'm trying to get to grips. I have a lot of retail experience, and I'm trying to get to grips with the way you're focusing on your need for variety, when at the same time your whole modus operandi is to restrict variety, one or two items at good prices rather than a lot of items. The tomato sauce example you gave earlier. And I know from my own experience that if I have a special offer that's been offered to the public, then I make sure that that takes prominent space on my display. And that may mean that other things are displaced or put into store. But there is a service and a logistical way of dealing with that without having such a large floor area. And what we need to know, what I need to know is, do you really need this extra space in order to be able to serve your public as you describe? I'm not convinced of that yet.
Well, I can only apologise for that, Councillor. Yes, we do need that space. I've been asked to apply for this application at 40.2 metres squared, and on the basis of the commercials that have been worked out by the client, which you've already referred to. There is the need for variety. The client is efficient in bringing the products forward. We've had submissions from Rebecca as to how that is done, and I'm not sure where the question is, other than you've said I've not convinced you that the 40.2 is what we need. I'm not sure how else to answer that point. Essentially, I think we've referred back to how we work the store. There is efficiency there. It is brought into the alcohol aisle. If you shop in Elgin or any of the other Aldi stores, you can see that. But yes, at Christmas and at Easter, we need to have additional project ranges coming forward, because that's, again, part of the marketing thing. They're not there all the year round. The Glühwein isn't going to be in store at the moment, but it would be brought back for the Christmas period, and it would be displayed. So the instructions are to apply at 40.2. Again, this is an application that's been delayed by another party for a significant period of time. And I think I've addressed you on the legal position with regards to over-provision and on the watching brief point. And to comment that the 34.3 metres squared is an Aberdeenshire average. Again, I've got no detail as to how that has been worked out, why it is relevant specifically to this application. And I have to stick at the 40.2, and I'm sure you'll understand.
Okay, I'm going to come in there. Just what might help, referring back to the question that Mr. Crowson put before, and the answer from Ms. Broadway, that have an additional capacity, there's probably catering for the majority of customers. The benefit of being able to offer a slightly wider range could outweigh any possible harms by people who come in with an alcohol issue, and the range isn't really going to be a factor for them. It's just the fact that it's there at all. If I try and sum it up like that, I think that might help. Jeff, with your other Jeff, Mr. Goodall.
It does a bit, Chair, but I'm still concerned about the reasons for the request for this additional square footage. It's 6 meters, and any reasonable manager can deal with that, in my experience. There are many ways. You've got a back store, you can service the area more frequently. There are many ways of getting around this, and I still haven't really had established to me the reason for this need of 40 metres as against 34, 35.
Okay. Just going back to Miss Loudon as well, the Aberdeenshire average, that figure was worked out looking at all the operating plans and the square meterage of all the licensed premises in Aberdeenshire and working out an average. So there will be some who are more and some who are less, because it's an average. So a couple more questions here. Mr. Crowson.
What a bit of guidance from Fiona, please. And I'm going to try and be careful of how I say this, so bear with me. And apologies, Caroline Loudon, don't take offence at what I say next. We were given guidance that when, although it was very nice to hear a lot of the things that the Aldi store will bring and the stuff that they do, that is irrelevant to what we're speaking about just now, which is the alcohol section of the store. So I think in the same respect, we shouldn't be comparing the choices of, say, 2 tomato sauces or 2 types of gravy granules to the choice that you would need in an alcohol section. And I'm concerned that we're starting to drift away from the actual thing that we're supposed to be talking about just now.
In terms of the legal test, the principle of the store and whether a store is required on the site has already been satisfied through the planning process. So that is not relevant. The demonstration of choice that's been put before you today is in relation to the benefits in relation to the sale of alcohol. And what you're being asked to consider is, do the benefits of the bigger area in relation to the wider choice outweigh the alcohol-related harms that have led the board to put in their policy that the Aberdeenshire average of 34.2 metres squared can be exceeded and a departure to policy in this case. And I think you have heard direct evidence in relation to choice, in relation to the benefits, and how that, from the applicant's point of view, outweighs the identified harm and the need for that Aberdeenshire average. What you've got to decide today is, are you satisfied by that to justify a departure to your policy, which would indicate that 34.3 is sufficient for an alcohol capacity in an off sale in the Macduff area. Now, you have heard from Rebecca clearly stated that the benefits of having that choice outweigh the risk of potential harm to any person that is dependent on alcohol or has alcohol related problems. That is a key statement for the board to take into account here. You've also heard that it's for seasonal displays. So perhaps I could throw into the mix here on behalf of the board, is it possible for the client to agree to the Aberdeenshire average for routine trading, but would the board accept an increased capacity to the required capacity for seasonal trading at Christmas and New Year? Is that something that the applicant has considered? Is that something the applicant would be prepared to accept? And I would put that to Caroline and Rebecca, because that may be of assistance to the board here.
Just before you
hold on, Rebecca, I'll bring you in. Yeah.
And the principle of how they choose to sell goods in the rest of their unlicensed part of the store would be irrelevant.
Absolutely irrelevant because
part.
it's not related to the sale of alcohol.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to point out at this stage as well, we do see applications from stores for additional displays for seasonal capacity. So for some reason, Easter comes into that now. I've never understood why, but Christmas, New Year, Easter. So that does come in. You were specifically asked to answer a question, Rebecca, so I'll bring you in.
Great, thank you. I'm sure Caroline will mention a few bits alongside it, but when we speak of seasonal ranges, we don't just mean Christmas, Easter and New Year. For us, a seasonal range changes consistently throughout the year because we are so limited on our product range. We have, for example, the next few weeks, we have things like our cocktail cans coming back in or our summer related lines that aren't necessarily around a key event. Yes, we have key event, and that's where other stores do have a key event license in addition. That's not what we're kind of debating here today. The seasonal changes that we have are not just specific to key events, they are ongoing throughout the year continuously, and they do kind of vary the range as such because we don't carry everything for summer and winter, spring, autumn, all the rest of it all throughout the year. And just one note I would like to add on the kind of benefits aspect of this is probably more from an operational point of view that I definitely see every single day within store, but the operational value of having consistency within all of our stores for what the standardized shelving and range looks like is really key for us in order to impart our merchandising plans, to have consistency from our suppliers, for consistency for the store. If we had a store that didn't sell part of the range, they would have their own merchandising plan created. It would be additional workload in order to achieve that efficiency, and by having that, they occasionally have issues with the supply chain with our stock that gets transferred in that then needs to be transferred out to another store, and it just hemorrhages what we at Aldi are all about, which is efficiency in order to make these savings, to deliver back the savings to the customer.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add anything there, Miss Loudon?
Yes, I would, please. I think we're possibly at a point that I need to take instructions from my instructing director, essentially, if that would, who would possibly give me 2 or 3 minutes just to do that, to take his instruction on this seasonal point. I think I have a difficulty, and I'll be quite candid with you all about that, in that Aldi would like to deliver this store, if a license is granted in some respect today, they'd like to open that before Christmas of this coming year, and there is a real time pressure to achieve that. We have to get onto site. We can't start on site without planning and licensing being in place, even though that's a provisional license. It's all triggered in terms of the legal documentation that we work with. So I can't afford essentially to have a refusal of the application today and then seek an appeal, for example, because it just delays matters further. So if there was a compromise position achievable that suited Your Honours, obviously Fiona as well, and the client could accept that, then of course I would put that forward to you. But I would need to go and just take instruction, if you wouldn't mind, from somebody who directly instructs me, and I'd like the ability to do that, if that would please Your Honours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to hear from members first, and then I think we'll take a decision. Mr. Crowson.
I wonder if it would be possible for us to head into discussions and then give Caroline the opportunity, if she still has that same concerns, to go ahead with her request.
Chair, I don't think that's reasonable. I think you need to hear from Caroline's clients on their position on this to inform your discussion. I think it's a reasonable request, and I think it is part of a fair process for considering this to allow that request. But I would do that before you enter your discussion phase. If you have any other questions that you think Caroline may need to put to her client during that break, now would be the time to ask, so that she can do it all at once.
Okay, sorry. It's just I thought the discussions might have, led to something else that maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, just to be clear, so the compromise that was suggested by Fiona was that they could operate at the average square meterage, but at times where they need additional seasonal displays, they could go up to their requested 40.29. But then Rebecca did also say that they don't carry the full range of stock throughout the year. They vary the offering depending on the season. So there might not actually be a requirement for additional space for seasonal displays, because the seasonal displays are in effect changing. So they're part of the core space and they're just changing depending on what they're focusing on at the time.
I think
Am I right?
I think Rebecca's response was that seasonal displays are not just confined to Christmas and Easter. Their seasonal displays vary throughout the year, so it may not be an option for them, but I think Caroline needs to speak to her client in order to confirm the position.
So I'll take in Mr. Taylor and Mr. Menard, and then I think we'll go to a break to allow us a comfort break, and it will also allow Caroline time to make her inquiries. Mr. Taylor, please.
You covered the point, Chair, that I was just going to make, the fact that their seasonal or their seasonal lines will vary throughout the year, and it will be throughout the year. But I think Caroline does need time to investigate that with her superior and answer that question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Menard.
Yeah, it's just a point. There are other stores in the area and not so far away that are actually exceed what we call the 3.4 metre squared thing. So I think we're getting a bit bogged down with this. Like I say, I appreciate the thing, but I do know this area quite well, as you know. So I think we need to have a break and think about where we're going with this. Thank you.
Chair, just in relation to Mr. Menard's comments, the other stores that exceed the capacity in the area are primarily in Banff, but the one in Macduff, which is the wholesaler, predates the current policy. Therefore, you can't compare apples and pears in that respect. It predates the policy.
My apologies. I accept that.
Okay. So we will go to a break just at this point to allow Miss Loudon time to confer. It's 12 minutes past 12. If we came back even at 20 past, that be okay? Is that long enough or a bit longer?
I think try. I'll make the call straight away.
Okay, if I say 25 past then to allow enough time.
Thank you.
Okay, so on a break, can we stop the recording, please?